Hey, Hutto Bible Church, Pastor Trey here. Happy Tuesday. We're going to be in Psalm 112 for our devotional today. And so if you haven't read that yet, just take a moment, go ahead and read that, and then come on back. If you have, you can continue watching this video. I hope that it's an encouragement to you, that it is a blessing to you, and that it ultimately just stirs your affections for Jesus in a really sweet way. So, there's a lot that could be talked about in Psalm 112, but what I want to do with our time, just to keep it brief, is just take a couple of minutes to share with you the ways in which the Lord encouraged me as I was going through this psalm. And so, for starters, throughout this psalm, we see a ton of mention of the righteous, right? There's this mention over and over and over again of the righteous one, of the righteous, and I was reminded this morning as I went through this psalm that for those of us who are in Christ Jesus, we have been given a righteousness that is not our own. And so the Bible is clear that there is a righteousness that neither you nor I could earn, a righteousness that would allow us to enter into the presence of God. But that you and I, because we are sinful and because we are broken, there's nothing we could do to ever earn that standing or that righteousness, but ultimately it's by grace through faith in Jesus and what He accomplished on the cross that we are now given a righteousness that was ultimately Christ's, as if it were our own. And so when God sees us, He sees Jesus, and it's by His righteousness that we can now approach God, that we can have confidence in the Lord, that we can have a relationship with our Father. And as I'm going through Psalm 112, I was reminded of that this morning, but then reminded of or encouraged by, as I'm thinking through that truth, encouraged by verses 6, 7, and 8, where it says, "For the righteous will never be moved. He will be remembered forever. He's not afraid of bad news. His heart is firm, trusting in the Lord. His heart is steady. He will not be afraid until he looks in triumph on his adversaries." And I was reflecting this morning on the season that you and I and the rest of the world really finds ourselves in. And it's seasons like this where we're confronted with the reality, I think, that we're human, right? That diseases are real, that death is a reality, and that we are all susceptible and ultimately will experience death unless Christ returns before then, right? And for the one who's righteous, the psalm is saying he will not be moved. Like, he's unmovable, right? His heart is steady. He's not afraid. His heart is firm. Why? Because he trusts in the Lord. Like, the righteous one trusts in the Lord. And in verse 1, blessed is the man who fears the Lord. Like, the righteous one fears the Lord, and it's the fear of the Lord that supersedes the fear of all other things, right? Of all diseases, of financial insecurity, of uncertainties, right? Like, that, what does the future hold? I don't know. There's so many things that can strike fear in our hearts. And for the righteous one, the one who fears the Lord and delights in His commands, the Bible is saying that his heart is steady and unmovable and firm. He is not afraid because he trusts in the Lord. The Lord is ultimately his rock, his foundation, his anchor, if you will. And then I love this. It says in verse 8, his heart is steady. He will not be afraid until he looks in triumph on his adversaries. Church, this is good news, because for you and I, our greatest adversary is not the coronavirus. Our greatest adversary is not again, financial insecurity or debt or whatever else we might want to kind of put in that spot. Our greatest adversary is sin and death. And here's what I love. That for those who are in Christ Jesus, there will come a time when we will stand victoriously with Him, right? He has gone before us. He has conquered sin and conquered death. He's resurrected gloriously, and the Bible tells us that there will be a time when all who are in Christ Jesus will stand triumphantly with Him over sin and death for all of eternity. And that is our hope. That is the good news of the gospel. And so, church, right now in a season where bad news is it's like, man, it's all over the place, right? It's not hard to find. There's no shortage of bad news, and certainly no shortage of people trying to encourage the world with some good news, right? Shout out to John Krasinski. Ultimately, the best news that we have is that Jesus Christ, the one who, by grace through faith, has given us his righteousness as if it were our own, has gone before us in death and in his resurrection has conquered sin, has conquered death, and one day we will stand victoriously and triumphantly with him as well over those things. That is our hope. That is what anchors us. That is what steadies our hearts in seasons of fear. And church, I pray that good news, the good news of the gospel and of the resurrection, that we too will partake in, that will steady you, righteous ones, in this season. Love you, church. Pray that this encourages you and blesses you and stirs your affections for Jesus. Until next time, grace and peace.